This is a new Cervelo Aspero gravel bike, and it's a lot like the original that launched way back in 2019, but the company says it's faster, smoother and more versatile. And today we'll find out if it's any good or not. I've been riding it for the last few weeks on my local trails here in the Cotswolds, so we'll talk about ride quality, performance and handling. We'll also see what it weighs on my scales, what it costs you to buy this bike, and go through the upgrades on the old bike. So I'm David, you're watching Just Ride Bikes. Let's dive in. Let's start this video by looking at the design of the bike and some of the changes and improvements. And visually, right off the bat, it does look very similar, almost identical to the old bike. Similar tube profiles and a similar silhouette. So the top tube is now more sloped than before to increase the standover height, and that's a good thing when you're throwing the bike around in the woods and on single track trails. Out back we have a few changes. So the seat stays are still dropped as before for extra compliance in the saddle, but the chain stays are dropped even more, and the seat tube, as you can see here, is curved to increase the tyre clearance at the back of the bike. So tyre clearance on the new model goes up from 40mm on a 700cc wheel to 42, so not a massive change, but the company does say there's up to 7.4mm of clearance between the rubber and the frame to allow extra mud clearance for the bike. So I reckon you can go up to 45 probably quite easily. I haven't tried that yet though, and it will depend on the actual tyre and rim combination. But as you can see, there's plenty of clearance around these 40mm wide tyres that come fitted as standard. A detail that carries over from the old bike is the flip chip in the fork dropout here. We've seen flip chips on forks and rear dropouts on other bikes like the 51 Assassin, the Giant Revolt, the Rondo, GT Grade and many others. And the idea is to maintain or adjust the fork trail depending on the wheels and tyres you run on the bike. So right now we're a 40mm wide tyre. The fork trail is about 62mm, which is quite long, designed to give a nice stable planted sort of handling balance so it's easy to ride at high speed over rough terrain. And if you do swap to a smaller wheel set, the trail will be maintained. It also means if you go down to a smaller tyre, you can modify that fork trail to suit your requirements as well. Now I haven't tried adjusting the fork trail on the bike because I don't think 650B is as popular as it was 4 or 5 years ago. I would mostly be riding a bike as it came, as it sold, as most of you will buy the bike seen right here. But it's nice to have that option if you do want it, and if you don't, it doesn't look that bad, there's no extra weight and no real penalty to having it. It's probably worth me doing a video separately on 700 versus 650B and the pros and cons of each, and whether the smaller wheel size is still relevant in 2024, because I don't feel it's as relevant as it used to be given the advances in bigger 700cc tyres. Let me know your thoughts by leaving a comment down below. Meanwhile, at the back of the frame we now have SRAM UDH dropouts. This is a new standard becoming very popular on many modern gravel bikes, and it means you can easily replace the mech hanger if it breaks or bends because of one single standard. And it means the frame is now compatible with SRAM's T-type transmissions like the Eagle mullet setup, which is very popular on gravel bikes, or anything new coming from SRAM down the line. And interesting to see how many companies are now embracing the standard and what Shimano will do in response to SRAM's fairly major play in reconfiguring, redefining dropouts on frames like this. To improve smoothness, they've actually decreased the stiffness at the head tube to give a bit more front end compliance. And out back we still have a round 27.2mm seat post with an external seat clamp, and I personally love this detail. Yes, internal wedge clamp systems are cleaner, but can be fiddly to set up, and you can't beat the easy setup of an external seat clamp. And the carbon fibre seat post on this model will definitely help comfort in the saddle. The other big change on the new Aspero is full internal routing. On the old bike, the cables and hoses went inside a frame about here. Now they go inside the steering tube, with the steering tube a D-shaped item. The routing system is the same on the other bikes like the Soloist, and it's actually compatible with those bikes as well. On this model we have a two-piece setup, but you can, if you want, go to a one-piece setup and have that brake hose inside the handlebar and stem. So options to customize the bike as you want. The down tube is also a bit slimmer as well, which leads to a new threaded bottom bracket using a T47A. Now, Cervelo have a history of doing bottom brackets a bit differently to most other manufacturers. And while on one hand it's great they have adopted that oversized threaded bottom bracket, they've done it a bit differently. So we have an external cup on the driver's side and an internal cup on the non-driver side. So you get the benefits of a T47 setup, but the downside is you can't buy an off-the-shelf T47 bottom bracket. You have to buy one that's compatible with a Cervelo, but should hopefully eliminate any issues with fitting and creaking that has plagued press fit in the past. This is definitely not a super versatile bike packing setup. We do have bolts on the top tube for a bento bag and a third bottle cage on the down tube where we find a neat bash guard to protect the carbon frame from rock strikes. But there aren't any mounts on the fork and there's definitely no fender or mudguard mounts. So not the super versatile option that other gravel bikes definitely are. So what will this new Aspero cost you to buy? Well, the range is priced from £3,000 with a Shimano GRX group set. And there are loads of options with Shimano and SRAM all the way up to this range top model, which will set you back £5,200 with a SRAM Rival AXA group set. And then we have the company's own carbon fibre reserve wheels. We then have WTB Volpine tyres in a 40mm width, and we'll talk about those in the ride section in a few moments. Other details worth noting is a flared carbon fibre aero handlebar and a carbon fibre seat post and a Pro logo saddle. So it is well equipped for money. There are cheaper bikes offering a similar specification from the likes of Canyon and Giant with the same sort of group set and configuration. So not crazy price, but definitely not the best value option in the market right now. Right, last detail before we go for a spin to see how much it weighs. So size 56, I've removed the pedals. We have a computer mount and bottle cage on there. And on the scales, drum roll please, 8.5 kilos, and in pounds 18.14. So not a crazy light build, but not crazy heavy either, and 8.5 kilos, a par for the course for a bike with a SRAM Rival specification. But is weight everything? Well, let's hit the trail and find out. Right, okay, let's see what this bike is like to ride. I've actually been testing it for several weeks now on my local trails, both dry and dusty and wet and muddy as it is today. So a real range of conditions, and the one thing that's clear from riding the bike for the very first time is just how damn quick it is. So I have a test loop which I ride these bikes on using power meter to write the same power, and it's right up there with the new Canyon Grail, the Scott Addict Gravel, and a 3T in its various incarnations like the Race Max as well. So definitely a quick bike, delivers the same speed that the original delivered way back in 2019. The bike just has a sense of speed that not all bikes possess in my experience. The geometry, the weight, the stiffness, the frame stiffness, especially when you're climbing, when you're really putting the power down on a climb, the bike just feels amazing. It really does feel fantastic when it comes to power transfer. The geometry is largely the same as the old bike and very similar to a Canyon Grail, but compared to a Canyon, the stack is lower and the reach a bit shorter, and we have quite a long top tube designed around a short stem, so it gives a good kind of fit on the bike and good handling as well. The fit does feel similar to a road bike, like an endurance road bike. And you're coming from a road bike and you want that sort of fit, then the bike will feel right for you. It does feel like a fat tire road bike in many situations. The geometry, as I said, very similar to the old bike, and it still works. There's nothing crazy in the numbers and the angles of this size 56 I'm riding, but it still delivers very good handling on a range of trails and different conditions. The steering is on the slow side, not lazy, but kind of calm and easy to control when you're riding through mud and over hard packed trails at high speed. But it's still nimble enough that you can change direction easily when a trail demands it. The wheelbase and chainstays are a bit longer, so perhaps a smidgen more stable than the old bike. Still have quite a high bottom bracket, so it's still a bike that delivers that good performance on the road, on the gravel, on a range of trail conditions. The tyres on this bike definitely encourage the speed as well. The Volpine is a closely packed tread pattern, very good when it's dry, not so good when it's muddy. And if you are encountering a muddy, rooty little climb, you do have to be very careful with power and weight balance to not spin out and lose traction and come to a standstill. So great tyre if you are riding on hard packed trails, which are a rare thing in the UK at this time of year, but a good option for the speed credentials of this Aspero. I do wish the bike had a bit more tyre clearance, and I might have to try a 45 just to see if it fits and how much clearance there is. But I get the bike is designed for high speed applications, racing, and a narrow tyre in dry conditions. Probably it's all you need. So that is the trouble with testing gravel bikes and companies speccing tyres on these bikes, that tyre choice does vary so much around the world. The riding I'm doing is very different to riding Ben Delaney is doing in Colorado. He doesn't have mud to contend with like I do, and rocks and roots. And as nice as the bike rides, it does take me back, well, 5 years now to when the Aspero first launched, and does remind me of that bike. And that is a bike I enjoyed riding and testing a lot. And Cervelo told me in the year since it's still been a popular bike for the company. But we've seen the gravel space explode with choice and bikes becoming ever more evolved and advanced in terms of geometry and other features. So the updates here, while useful and nice, and do maintain everything that was great about the original Aspero, I don't think really move it forward enough to contend with some of the more exciting options in the market right now. So a great bike, yes, and I like the way they continue the design of the bike, but I think there are bikes that are perhaps a bit more enticing in terms of features and other design aspects of the bikes and tyre clearance and comfort as well. So an interesting dilemma in whether Cervelo has done enough to keep the Aspero current, or whether they haven't been brave and bold enough to really move it forward to keep pace where gravel is going, because gravel is definitely evolving, definitely moving. There's more space for development, for new ideas. And it does come down to what you want from your gravel bike, the riding you are doing. This might well be enough, and you might think the changes are enough, but you might think the bike is still lagging behind other options in the market right now. So an interesting debate. I guess ultimately you will decide whether the bike is right, whether the changes are enough. I think the bike is definitely a good bike. It still has all the hallmarks of the original, but just tweaked and improved in key places. It's also not the smoothest riding bike. They say it's smoother than the old bike, but I'm not sure I can tell that from riding this bike without the old bike alongside for comparison. And it's definitely a firmer riding gravel bike. It's not as smooth as the Canyon Grail or a Giant Revolt or a Cannondale Topstone or a GT Grade. The carbon seat post definitely helps, but yeah, not the comfiest, plushest riding bike. But I don't think if you're racing, if you're riding at speed, then comfort is probably not right at the top of your list. I'm not saying it's a hard riding bike, just not quite as bump taming as there's other options in the market right now. So should you buy the new Cervelo Aspero or avoid it? Well, just like the original launched all those years ago, this is still a high performance, high speed option. But I don't think the changes are enough to warrant upgrading from the old model if you currently own that. And there are more exciting options in the market right now, like the Canyon Grail, for example, with its frame storage and sleek bag solution. And if you want more comfort, more versatility and bigger tyre clearance, then a Giant Revolt and a Trek Checkpoint are probably better options. But all that said, I do think the new Cervelo Aspero will suit and match the riding and racing a lot of people are doing these days, with a big focus on speed and performance. And if you want to see some of the other contenders in the gravel space right now, then do watch the video right up here. And of course, don't forget to subscribe by hitting the button down here. But that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again very soon.